I'm ready to go toe to toe with anybody on terms of quantity of failure. I have, written 8,500 blog posts. Half of them have been below average. I have been thrown out of fancy offices. I have had businesses that not work, ideas that didn't resonate. And I'm grateful for every single one of them, because the things we learn from a failure are so much more vivid and so much more resonant than the story we tell ourselves about a success.
My incredible guest, Seth Godin. Seth is an entrepreneur, best-selling author, and speaker. In addition to launching one of the most popular blogs in the world, he's written 19 best-selling books, including The Dip, Lynchpin, Purple Cow, Tribes, What to Do When It's Your Turn, and It's Always Your Turn. His most recent book, This Is Marketing, was an instant bestseller in many countries around the world. Seth was might be the only one who's inducted into the Direct Marketing Hall of Fame and the Marketing Hall of Fame. Special shout out to Ramon Ray, who got me in touch with Seth. Seth, thank you for joining me here on Mind Your Business.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me. This is old school, classic New York radio.
Thank you. He's right. Seth, how can a company get their ideas to take root, spread, and grow like wildfire?
Well, it helps to start with ideas that are going to take root and spread, as opposed to insisting that the world like what you've got. It probably makes more sense to make something the world wants. And too many businesses who have tried really hard to build what they've built and have toiled now believe they deserve people's attention, but you don't. Attention is scarce, attention is precious, and it's not going to come your way unless it's in the interest of the people you're serving.
So you have to really know your target market, make sure you're on point and serving them something they're truly interested in.
Maybe instead of thinking of them as a target market, which is sort of a hunting term, you could think of them as students and figure out how to be of service. Because if we can figure out a few people to serve, it is way better than trying to capture attention.
Seth, what is the single most important factor needed for a successful advertising campaign?
So there's two kinds of advertising, direct marketing and brand. Most online advertising is direct because you can measure it. And the reason that Google and Facebook got so profitable is if you run $100 worth of ads and it works, you make $200, so you do it again. That's not the way podcast ads work or radio ads work or billboard ads work or TV ads work. Those are brand ads. You can't measure them. And so they require frequency and patience. You show up and you show up and you show up. You don't change your ad because you're out of patience. You change your ad because you've had it run its course. And making that kind of advertising work is a totally different game than figuring out how to do direct marketing that works.
Now, later on in the interview, we are going to talk about, and of course you address it in one of your books, The Dip. But now I just want to touch on something you just mentioned. Can you please define the difference between branding and marketing?
So a brand is not a logo. A brand is a promise. It is the shortcut we have for what to expect from you. Everything about you, the way you dress, the way you talk, where you show up, how much you charge, who your coworkers are, what you dump in the river, all of these things inform your brand. And everyone either has a brand because we're judging you or you're ignored. And marketing isn't advertising. Marketing is the hard work of figuring out how to make things better for the people you're serving by living and breathing a story, a change in the world. That is marketing, which means that anything that touches the market is marketing, which means that everyone in the organization works for the person who's the head of marketing.
You know, Seth, you bring to mind an interview I had with Jeffrey Hazlett. A brand is a promise delivered. That was the way he put it. A brand is a promise delivered.
And I think Jeffrey learned that from me. I'm thrilled that it came out.
Okay. I'll have to say it, big brother Jeffrey. We'll have to point that out. By the way, and I've heard you talk about this in the past, but perhaps I could just hold on to it. Your take on building a following on Instagram.
Okay, so first thing I got to tell you about social media, whichever form you use, LinkedIn, Facebook, doesn't matter. If you're not paying, you're not the customer. You're the product. And your job is not to make Mark Zuckerberg happy. That's not why you wake up in the morning. So don't use any of these platforms the way you're, quote, supposed to. And don't spend a lot of your time chasing the latest trend. You're not going to be the next Kardashian. We already have a Kardashian. That likes don't mean people like you, and friends aren't really your friends. So this is a channel to earn permission, the privilege to deliver anticipated, personal, and relevant messages to the people who want to get them. However, the problem with these owned and operated social media sites is they could take it away from you at any time. Yeah. At the beginning, on Facebook, you could reach all of your friends and fans anytime you wanted, and then they started strangling it and charging you to boost your message. So, Instagram, your question. I got 250,000 people who are on my Instagram channel, even though I have never once used Instagram the way you're supposed to. I don't post pictures of my dog or what I ate for lunch. Use it the way you want to use it, but do it in a way that the people who follow you are glad they did. Because they're not doing it to sign up for your commercials. They're doing it to fill their day with something that matters to them.
The power of story. When I interviewed Beth Comstock, and I see you have a beautiful quote, I interviewed her a number of times. She talked about the power of story. And in fact, on one of the interviews, she kind of railed in a polite way. She said, people come to me with an idea, and then they say, okay, now we have to put a story to it. She says, no. What's your story? And then how are you, what's your product? What's your concept? What's your initiative to support that story? Right. Seth, your take on the power of story.
Well, my friend Bernadette Jiwa has written the best books on this topic. But basically, if you know anything, if you remember anything, it's because you told yourself a story about it. You told yourself a story about your grandma's rugluck. You told yourself a story about that day you got picked in gym class. You told yourself a story. A story is not once upon a time. A story is tension and release. A story is possibility and realization. Human beings live with stories. So Beth's extraordinary work for all those years at GE, she didn't make nuclear power plants, but she figured out how the narrative associated with whatever GE was making matched and fit into the worldview and beliefs of the people the story is being told to. Like all these people who are irrational, who are taking placebos, who are believing this or believing that, suddenly they get to work and they become engineers. I'm not buying it. Very few people live their life as engineers, facts and figures. That's not what it's about. It's about what do we tell ourselves to make sense of our lives and the world around us.
Seth, you frequently talk about what someone can learn from failure. And of course, at the famous TED Talk, which it's getting towards 2 million views at this point, you talk about your CD sauce. What was the thinking behind it and the lessons learned from that?
Well, I guess I would say that the only thing we learn from is failure. Even if it succeeds, we're learning from it because we're so relieved we didn't fail. But failure is where learning lives. It's not about doing well on the test. It's about experiencing the story of what didn't work. And I'm ready to go toe-to-toe with anybody in terms of quantity of failure. I have, written 8,500 blog posts. Half of them have been below average. I have been thrown out of fancy offices. I have had businesses that not work, ideas that didn't resonate. And I'm grateful for every single one of them because the things we learn from a failure are so much more vivid and so much more resonant than the story we tell ourselves about a success.
Now, in the book, The Dip, and this is really such a critical topic, and that is the importance of patience. My question to you, Seth, is for an individual or a company that's coming out with a new product, what are your guidelines? What's your recommended advice for how long an individual or a company should hold on to that concept and say, give it time? Like in your example in the TED Talks, you talk about sliced bread. It took years for it to take hold until, of course, today, the greatest thing since sliced bread. How long should someone hold on to it before they say, maybe this is just a big waste of time?
So there are two parts to your question. It's a great question. The first part, I'll tell you a story. In 1983, a guy came to my office and he said, I got this great idea. And the idea was a headband that you could use to use your brain to control a video game. And he says, I'm making this product and I'm spending the entire marketing, promotion, advertising budget on one episode of The Cosby Show. I'm going to run one ad, one time. And then he said, and it's going to cut through the market like a hot knife through butter, like a reaper through a wheat field. I didn't even know what a reaper was. I just knew that it could go through a wheat field really fast. And I said, that's your plan? He said, it's all the money I got. I said, then you picked too big a project. Many small businesses pick too big a project. You need to pick a small enough project that you can pick your smallest viable audience and persistently and consistently and generously with frequency show up again and again and again and again and again to get to the other side. Because if you have made the stakes so high that if it doesn't work the first time you're out, you might as well not even bother to show up. Because every success that we can talk about, it doesn't matter. Twitter was a failure for a year and a half. Google had zero revenue for more than its first year. I don't care which one you want to name. It just doesn't work that you're going to be discovered outside a drugstore and then made into the star of the biggest movie of the year. Much more likely is that this journey is going to be about failing and earning trust. Attention isn't your problem. Trust is your problem. Why should we loan you our attention? Why should we sign up? Why should we try it? That takes time. And the way we get through this is by picking a tiny group of people to serve, and then they tell their friends, not you running around hustling. No one wants to be hustled. Nobody.
Seth, before my final question, am I allowed to ask any new works you're on, any new books that you care to share with the audience?
Well, in November, my book, The Practice, came out. It's about shipping creative work, and I'm really pleased that it seemed to resonate with people. And the workshops I built at Akimbo, I don't own them or run them anymore. It's a B Corp, but they're at akimbo.com, akimbo.com.
I thank you so much for your time. Any final takeaways with the listeners of Mind Your Business?
Here's the deal. I have such respect for the kind of person that wants to lean into building a small business. And that's who's listening today. Mm-hmm. But if you don't have time to do it right, when are you going to find time to do it over? Stop trying to look for a shortcut and a hustle. And instead, figure out how to be missed if you're gone. Figure out how to lean into generosity and possibility and do work you are proud of. It turns out, amazingly, that is not only the shortcut to happiness, but it's the shortcut to doing good work.
Seth, I can't thank you enough for joining me on tonight's edition of Mind Your Business.
It's a pleasure. Go make a ruckus, everybody.
Thank you for watching, and make sure to subscribe to this channel and be notified every single time a new video goes live. Don't miss out on any of the weekly interviews that I have with top business leaders, sometimes Fortune 500 executives. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications.